I'll be covering off some of the general business information that you have to consider when looking at the South African market, which we call the land of possibilities, not only into South Africa, but also Southern Africa as a whole. And then I'll move on specifically to the retail sector. So very quickly, South Africa has 9 provinces. Pretoria, our administrative center. Cape Town, our legislative. Bloemfontein, our judicial. And then Johannesburg, which is sort of just next to Pretoria, is regarded as the commercial center of the country. We have a population of about 52 million people. And this is characterized by a smaller upper class population who look very much to high quality luxury goods. And then a growing middle class who have now become increasingly aspirational and are looking particularly at high quality goods coming out of the UK, out of Europe, and the United States. Okay, at UKTI, we often get asked, why should we look at South Africa? And we've listed some of the short reasons. South Africa is the economic powerhouse of Africa. We account for about 40% of the continent's industrial output and about 50% of spending power. We have the most modern and developed infrastructure in Africa. And at the same time, the South African government has committed to a massive infrastructure development program. This is aimed at creating more jobs as well as boosting economic growth. Very importantly, South Africa is also regarded as the gateway to other Southern African markets. So the very quick growing Southern African region where economies are growing at about 5.5% per year. In terms of the ease of doing business, we've been ranked by the World Bank as 35 out of 183 countries. English is the main business language. We have very similar systems and cultures to the UK. And also, importantly, the time difference is never more than 2 hours. I'll go through this very quickly. I'm happy for the presentation to be made available, so I won't go through every point. South Africa has a strong financial and legal services sector. Our stock exchange is amongst the top 10 in the world. And then looking at some of the weaknesses, we do have high unemployment, high levels of inequality, and then HIV, AIDS, and crime is also quite high in South Africa, though the latter two in recent years have declined a lot due to government intervention. On the political side, we have a young, relatively stable, multi-party democracy that is dominated by one political party since the end of apartheid. We held national elections last year, and the ANC won these elections. But a very good sign for democracy is that opposition parties are also growing in power. In terms of the economy, South Africa had recovered from a recession. This was due to prudent macroeconomic policies that targeted infrastructure-led growth. There are many job creation programs in the country. And we also have a very strong business environment. Our economy is diversified. So all this had led to the stability of the economy. We have experienced new economic challenges this year in the form of an energy crisis. And this has led to what we call load shedding in South Africa. What this means is that we have scheduled power cuts at certain times in certain areas. And this has tended to affect the industrial sector, particularly the manufacturing sector, which declined over the last 2 quarters. However, as of yesterday, we were informed that we've gone a month without any power cuts. So this is a good sign. It's an indication that the interventions the government has put in place are hopefully working and will do so going forward. Okay, I just want to take a moment to explain what triple B double E is. It is not applicable to the retail sector or to the private sector as yet, but UKTI makes a point of informing every UK company who wants to do business in South Africa about what this local content policy is. Basically, it's a government effort to integrate the previously disadvantaged population, so that was the population under apartheid, back into the economic mainstream. So this is through means of facilitating ownership, creating skills and training opportunities, as well as enterprise and supplier development amongst the black sector of the population. And when I say black sector, I include colored and Asian within that. As I said, BEE codes only apply to the public sector, so that's to government and parastatals. But if you are a private company wanting to do business with government, you need to apply the codes. So an easy example, if you are a uniform manufacturer and you want to supply to the South African police force, you need to partner with the local company in order to meet the necessary requirements to supply to a government organization. Okay, moving on to the retail sector. The South African retail sector is the largest on the African continent. We had growth of about 5.7 billion last year, and it's estimated to grow another 4% this year. Sales are estimated to reach about 1.4 trillion by 2016. This growth has been driven mainly by the rise of the middle class and black diamonds in South Africa, as well as the wider availability of credit. What do I mean when I say the black diamonds? I refer to the growing middle class in South Africa, who are comprised mainly of the black, Indian, and colored population. Okay, and this group is proving to be an important target market for retailers because they have become increasingly aspirational and looking to luxury or higher end products coming out of the UK, the US, and Europe. Another feature of the South African retail sector is that people tend to buy more on credit. This is because of a history of limited financial availability in South Africa, and store credit cards have evolved to become very popular. So the retail sector in South Africa growing, doing quite well, but performance may be affected by international economic conditions, rising consumer debt, as well as the impact of high import tariffs. These are just some graphs giving an indication of retail trade sales in South Africa. As you can see, textiles and clothing performs the best. And under there, we also include things like footwear, jewelry, accessories, etc. Okay, and then this slide is just to give an idea of the formal type of department store, clothing store environment in South Africa. On the top row, you see the largest South African retailers. So Edgar's, Foschini, Truworths, Stutterfords, and I've omitted Woolworths from the list. So this Woolworths is different to the UK Woolworths, and it's actually very similar to a Marks and Spencer's. These retailers dominate not only the South African retail scene, but also the Southern African retail scene, and actually going into sub-Saharan Africa. As I mentioned, South Africa has seen an influx of more foreign players into the retail market. So some of the names like Zara, Topshop, Mango, Cotton On from Australia, Forever New, and then River Island from the UK. H&M is due to open in South Africa later this year. And Next is currently selling online in South Africa. And given their success in the market, it's likely that they will be opening physical stores soon. Okay, some of the market entry models, so the traditional agent route, we always advise UK companies that if you are getting an agent in South Africa, please make sure that they have the necessary contacts into the industry, and that they also have the capacity and capability to properly represent your brand in market. Likewise, with distributors, please make sure you choose a reliable company. UKTI has been contacted a number of times by UK companies who have partnered with local companies who are unable to manage their brand properly, and it has actually led to a negative perception of their brand in market. So at the outset, make sure you go with the correct partner. Then we have stocking arrangements, so that's dealing directly with the local retailers. And then in-store concessions. I've put up some pictures there of what the Banana Republic and Ted Baker in-store concessions look like in some of our big department stores. Then I'll also just quickly mention the Topshop model. So Topshop has standalone stores in South Africa, but they've also entered into an agreement with our biggest retailer, Edgar's. And in terms of this, you can actually use your Edgar's store card to purchase at a Topshop on store credit. And basically, what has happened is that there are more sales on the Edgar's store card at Topshop than there are traditional cash or credit card methods. So this shows that it's quite important to consider your entry strategy into South Africa and how your target consumers are going to behave. Okay, before I explain what this partnership is, I'll just take a step back and say that in September last year, the then UK Minister for Trade, Lord Livingston, launched the e-exporting initiative. So what this meant was that he tried to make it easier for UK companies who wanted to do business overseas by facilitating agreements with local e-commerce marketplaces, so that UK brands could set up online, sell online at preferential pre-negotiated terms. This led to the partnership with Spree, and Spree is a fashion and lifestyle e-commerce platform in South Africa. It was launched in 2013 and has had over 4 million users. So basically, working together with UKTI, Spree is looking for UK online shops, resellers, and manufacturers who operate within ladies' and menswear fashion, kids and babies' clothing, as well as jewelry and accessories. Spree also introduces you to partner companies who help to facilitate things like digital marketing, traffic to the website, and logistics. So in terms of a commercial model, there are different options available. Consignment, virtual consignment, fulfillment out of the UK. And what happens is that Spree will look at your brand individually and then advise you as to what the best model is to follow. Some of the things you need to look at when considering listing on Spree. So IP protection, what your payment terms and remittances are going to be, sales tax. I'll come back to the invoice example and tariffs on another slide. In terms of customer service, so Spree deals with first-line customer inquiries and non-faulty returns, and then second-line customer service, faulty returns, is dealt with by the seller, so the UK company. Okay. If you are interested, have a look at their website, www.spree.co.za. And if companies are interested in setting up on this website, we advise them to get in touch with myself. I facilitate an introduction to Spree. If you're already working with a trade advisor here, please involve them in the process because they can support you from the UK while I support you in South Africa. What then happens is that we make the introduction to Spree, who assess your product and advise you on whether it will work in the market, as well as the commercial terms, etc. Onboarding can take place immediately, and then it's 3 months if it's shipped, and a month if products are air freighted to South Africa. Okay, so just an example of an invoice, because people always have an interest in knowing how pricing is calculated. So you look at the price in in the UK of £10, taking into account all the different rates of duty, the customs tax, etc., and a margin of 40%. Then how we arrive at the price of £9.3 in South Africa. So we've given you two different examples of how we calculate the price, just as an indication of, what your product would possibly sell for in the South African market. Okay, generally import tariffs into South Africa are very high, particularly on clothing and textile items. This is in order to protect the local textile manufacturing industry that had been damaged by cheap imports coming out of the East. So as you can see, some of the duties, for example, on clothing, very high at 45%. But if you apply the UK EU exemption, it comes down to about 20%. So in order to make sure that you qualify for this exemption, you have to have certain documentation in order before your product goes through customs in South Africa. What this is a Euro 1 certificate that must be stamped and signed by a Chamber of Commerce in the UK. And you also need to clearly state your product composition as well as country of origin on your invoice. Okay, I've mentioned earlier access to the Southern African market. Southern Africa is growing quite rapidly. There are numerous opportunities across the different countries, and this has led to a surge in consumer spending. As I said, the South African retailers are the ones that are most active in Southern Africa, so very important to have some sort of tie-up with them in order to have access to these other markets. In addition to South Africa, UKTI is focusing on Zambia, Namibia, Mauritius, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. We do have a presence in most of the other countries and can assist you in those markets, but the listed markets are the ones where we see most potential for growth. Okay, I won't go through everything here on how we can assist because you can view it on the presentation. But basically, we can assist you with market research, finding a partner in market, helping you to set up, as well as assisting with events or with product launches. Basically, we invite all companies who have a query about South Africa to get in touch with us, tell us what you're looking for, and we can outline how we are able to assist you.